Sometimes the most dangerous moment isn't when a mistake is made, but when the wrong person believes no one will ever hold them accountable. On a cool Tuesday morning in Baltimore, the streets were just beginning to wake up under a pale gray sky. Commuters filled the avenues, coffee shops buzzed with early conversations, and parents hurried their children toward school before the morning bell. Angela Brooks was one of those parents. She drove a modest silver sedan through a quiet neighborhood street, glancing in the rearview mirror at her young son buckled safely in the back seat. He was humming softly to himself, swinging his small sneakers back and forth while clutching a backpack that looked almost too big for his shoulders. For Angela, mornings were a carefully balanced routine measured in minutes and miles. Drop her son at school, drive 10 miles across the city to work, and make sure every detail of the day stayed on schedule. But as she slowed at a stop sign, flashing red and blue lights suddenly reflected across her windshield. The sound of a police siren cut sharply through the calm morning air. Angela blinked in confusion before carefully guiding her car to the curb. In Baltimore, a traffic stop could happen for many reasons, so she kept both hands calmly on the steering wheel just like every driver's manual recommends. A patrol car rolled up behind her sedan, its lights still spinning silently against the brick buildings lining the street. A tall officer stepped out. His name was Officer Derek Callahan, a veteran on the force known around the precinct for his strict attitude and quick judgments. As he approached the vehicle, a few pedestrians slowed their steps nearby, sensing that familiar tension that sometimes follows unexpected police stops. Angela lowered her window halfway and greeted him politely, her voice steady and respectful. She asked if something was wrong, assuming perhaps she had missed a signal or driven a mile or two above the speed limit. Callahan studied the car for a moment, then looked inside toward the back seat where the young boy sat watching nervously. The officer's expression remained hard to read, and the conversation that followed began attracting quiet attention from people walking along the sidewalk. A delivery driver across the street paused beside his truck. A college student waiting for the bus lifted her phone slightly, not recording yet, just watching. Something about the exchange felt tense, like a storm cloud forming when the sky had been clear only seconds earlier. Angela kept her voice calm, answering every question carefully, determined not to escalate a situation she didn't understand. The morning traffic continued flowing past them, tires humming across the asphalt while curious eyes glanced over. In that moment, it seemed like nothing more than a routine stop, one of thousands that happen across America every single day. But what no one standing on that street could possibly know was that within hours, a short video recorded there would spread across the entire country. Millions of people would watch it. News stations would replay it again and again. And somewhere nearly 40 miles away, inside a quiet federal office in Washington, D.C., one man would press play on that same video and realize the woman in the car was not just a stranger in a headline. She was his wife. The quiet street in Baltimore did not feel quiet anymore. Angela Brooks could sense the shift in the air the moment Officer Derek Callahan stepped closer to her driver's side window. The morning that had begun like any other now carried a strange tension that neither of them could ignore. Angela kept both hands visible on the steering wheel exactly the way every driver education class in America recommends. Her voice stayed calm as she asked if there was a problem with her vehicle. Callahan did not answer immediately. Instead, he slowly scanned the interior of the car again, his eyes moving from the dashboard to the back seat, where the young boy sat watching everything with wide, uncertain eyes. The child stopped swinging his feet and gripped the straps of his backpack, as if holding on to something familiar might make the moment less frightening. Angela gently reassured him without turning around, telling him everything was fine and that they would be at school soon. But the officer's silence stretched longer than expected, and that silence began to attract attention from people nearby. A man walking his dog slowed down across the street. Two construction workers standing beside a pickup truck paused their conversation. Even the college student waiting at the bus stop shifted her phone in her hand, her curiosity growing stronger by the second. Callahan finally spoke, his tone firm and demanding as he asked Angela where she was heading that morning. She answered honestly, explaining that she was taking her son to school before driving to work across town. Her explanation was simple and respectful, yet the officer continued asking questions as though searching for something hidden beneath ordinary answers. Angela reached slowly for her license and registration when he requested them, making sure every movement was careful and visible. Years of hearing stories about tense traffic stops had taught her that calm cooperation was always the safest path. Still, something about the officer's posture suggested that the situation was not moving toward a quick resolution. The small crowd nearby began to grow as more pedestrians realized something unusual was happening. A delivery driver stepped out of his van and leaned against the door, watching quietly. The college student finally raised her phone, this time pressing record almost instinctively. No one said anything out loud, but people could feel the tension building like pressure before a summer storm. Angela handed over her documents and waited patiently while Callahan examined them. Seconds passed, then more seconds. Cars rolled by slowly, drivers glancing toward the flashing patrol lights before continuing down the road. Inside the car, Angela's son whispered a question asking if they were in trouble. Angela answered softly that they were not, and that sometimes officers simply needed to check information. Her voice remained steady, even though the moment was beginning to stretch far beyond a routine stop. What no one on that street understood yet was that a single decision made in the next few minutes would transform an ordinary morning into a story that would travel far beyond Baltimore. Because the phone recording from the bus stop was still running, capturing every word, every expression, and every second of a moment that would soon be seen by millions across the country. The morning air felt heavier with every passing second as Officer Derek Callahan continued studying the driver license in his hand, as though the small plastic card might reveal something more than a name and address. Angela Brooks remained seated calmly behind the wheel of her silver sedan, her hands resting exactly where they had been from the beginning. She knew the importance of staying patient even when a situation became uncomfortable. Across the street, the man walking his dog had stopped completely now, pretending to adjust the leash while keeping his eyes on the scene. The college student at the bus stop continued recording with her phone held quietly at chest level. In the back seat, Angela's young son watched the officer carefully, his earlier humming replaced by nervous silence. The flashing patrol lights reflected faintly across nearby storefront windows as morning traffic moved slowly past. Finally, Callahan lowered the license slightly and asked another question, this time about where Angela lived and how long she had owned the vehicle. The questions were not unusual by themselves, but the tone behind them carried an edge that made the conversation feel less like a routine stop and more like an interrogation. Angela answered politely again, explaining that she had lived in the same Baltimore neighborhood for years and that the car was registered in her name. She spoke clearly, making sure every word sounded calm and respectful. Yet the officer continued studying her as if trying to decide something that had not yet been spoken out loud. Another passerby slowed near the sidewalk, noticing the small gathering of curious onlookers. It was one of those strange moments where ordinary life continued moving forward while a single scene seemed frozen in place. Callahan stepped back slightly from the window and glanced toward the patrol car behind him, then looked again at Angela as though weighing his next move. Inside the sedan, the quiet tension could be felt even by the young boy in the back seat. He leaned forward slightly and whispered that he was worried about being late for school. Angela gave him a reassuring smile through the rearview mirror and told him they would handle everything one step at a time. Her voice carried the calm confidence of a parent who understood that fear grows quickly when children see uncertainty. Outside the car, the college student recording the encounter adjusted her position for a clearer view. She did not know why she felt compelled to keep filming, but something about the officer's body language told her the moment might matter later. People nearby could sense that the situation had moved beyond a simple exchange of documents. The air felt thick with anticipation, as though everyone present was waiting for the next sentence that might change the direction of the morning. Callahan finally returned the documents through the window, but did not step away. Instead, he asked Angela to remain exactly where she was while he checked additional information through his patrol system. The words sounded procedural, yet the officer's expression suggested that the encounter was far from over. Angela nodded quietly and waited as instructed, unaware that the camera still recording from across the street was capturing every detail of a moment that would soon travel far beyond this quiet Baltimore block. Officer Derek Callahan walked back toward his patrol car with Angela Brooks's documents still fresh in his mind, though there had been nothing unusual about them. The engine of the police cruiser idled quietly, while the red and blue lights continued spinning across the brick buildings and parked vehicles along the street. Angela remained seated exactly where she had been instructed to stay, her hands resting gently on the steering wheel while she waited for whatever would come next. In the rearview mirror, she could see her son watching the scene unfold with the kind of careful attention children give to moments they do not fully understand. She gave him another reassuring glance, hoping her calm expression would ease the tension he felt. Outside the car, the small gathering of bystanders had grown slightly larger. The man with the dog had not moved from his position near the corner, and the delivery driver leaned against his van with folded arms while observing quietly. The college student continued recording with steady hands, sensing that something about this moment might matter later. Inside the patrol car, Callahan typed information into the onboard computer while the radio crackled softly with distant voices from other officers around the city. Baltimore mornings were always busy, and countless calls moved through the system every hour, yet the street where Angela had been stopped felt strangely suspended in time. After a minute, Callahan stepped out of the cruiser again and walked slowly back toward the sedan. His expression remained serious as he approached the window. Angela straightened slightly in her seat, ready to listen carefully. The officer explained that he needed to clarify a few more details before the stop could be completed. His voice was firm and procedural, the tone of someone used to being obeyed without question. Angela nodded politely and answered every question with patience, repeating where she worked and confirming that she was taking her son to school just a few blocks away. Her calm responses seemed only to deepen the officer's scrutiny. He glanced once more toward the back seat where the boy sat quietly, then back to Angela as though searching for something he could not quite define. The pedestrians nearby exchanged uncertain looks. None of them could hear every word being said, but the length of the stop had already begun to feel unusual. Cars continued passing through the intersection at the end of the block, drivers slowing briefly when they noticed the flashing patrol lights before continuing on their way. Angela noticed the phone pointed in her direction from the bus stop and realized that someone had begun recording the encounter. Instead of feeling alarmed, she took a slow breath and reminded herself that staying calm was the best path forward. The officer asked her to step out of the vehicle so that he could speak with her more clearly outside the car. Angela hesitated for only a moment, glancing again at her son before carefully opening the door. She reassured him that everything would be fine and asked him to remain seated while she spoke with the officer. As she stepped onto the sidewalk, the morning air felt cooler than before, and the quiet street seemed suddenly full of watchful eyes. No one present could know that the recording devices already capturing this moment would soon carry the story far beyond this Baltimore neighborhood, reaching newsrooms, living rooms, and eventually one federal office where a single viewer would recognize the woman standing beside that car. Angela Brooks stood beside her silver sedan with the morning breeze moving lightly through the quiet Baltimore street, trying to keep her posture calm even though the situation had clearly stretched far beyond a normal traffic stop. Officer Derek Callahan faced her with the firm stance of someone accustomed to authority, his patrol car lights still casting slow pulses of red and blue across the pavement behind them. Inside the vehicle, Angela's young son sat quietly in the back seat exactly where she had asked him to stay, his small face visible through the rear window as he watched his mother with worried eyes. Angela kept her voice steady as she answered another series of questions from the officer, explaining once again that she was simply taking her son to school before heading to work across the city. Her tone remained respectful, the kind that comes from someone who understands. That patience can sometimes defuse tension better than frustration. Around them, the small group of onlookers had grown more attentive. The delivery driver shifted his weight against the side of his van, while the man with the dog stood near the corner pretending to check his phone. The college student continued recording without lowering the camera, aware that something about this moment felt larger than a routine exchange. Columbia, the morning inside a quiet federal office building was unfolding in a completely different rhythm. Fluorescent lights hummed softly above rows of desks where analysts reviewed reports and federal agents prepared for another day of work. Inside one corner office, Daniel Brooks sat behind a desk covered with neatly organized case files and a secure laptop displaying the schedule for the day. As a United States Marshal, his mornings often began before sunrise, reviewing warrants, coordinating with local agencies, and making decisions that affected operations across several states. The work demanded focus, discipline, and patience. From the beginning, studying every detail of the street, the officer, and the crowd forming around the encounter. Outside his office, the normal sounds of the building continued as agents walked through the hallway and phones rang at nearby desks. Yet inside that quiet room, Daniel Brooks remained focused on the video, now paused on the screen. His expression was not angry, and it was not panicked. It was something far more controlled. The kind of calm that comes from years of training and discipline. Slowly, he set the phone down on the desk and looked toward the window overlooking the city. Somewhere beyond those buildings, a moment had unfolded that the entire country would soon be talking about. And the man now watching that moment from a federal office was not just a viewer on the internet. He was the husband of the woman standing beside that car, and a United States Marshal who understood exactly how powerful a single recorded moment could become. Inside the federal office, the quiet weight of the moment remained long after the video stopped playing. Daniel Brooks stood slowly from his chair and walked toward the window overlooking the wide avenues of Washington District of Columbia. Morning sunlight reflected off the glass buildings across the street, while the distant movement of traffic carried on as if nothing unusual had happened. Yet Daniel understood something important that the rest of the city did not know yet. The short recording captured on that Baltimore sidewalk was already beginning to move across the internet faster than anyone involved could control. He had spent enough years in federal service to recognize the pattern. A single clip appears online, people begin sharing it, and within hours it becomes a national conversation. Daniel returned to his desk and played the video again, this time watching with the careful attention of someone trained to study details others might miss. The location of the street sign in the background, the number on the patrol car door, the faces of the bystanders who had gathered nearby. Every element told part of the story. Angela's voice in the recording remained calm and steady even through the tense moment captured on camera. Their son could be seen briefly through the back window of the sedan, sitting quietly just as Angela had asked him to do. Daniel felt a deep sense of respect for the way she had handled the situation. She had stayed patient, composed, and clear. That composure mattered more than most people realized. Morning news. Yet even the broadcasters had begun mentioning a viral video circulating online involving a traffic stop in Baltimore. The clip was spreading faster with every passing minute. Daniel kept his attention on the road while his mind moved carefully through the facts he had already observed. Angela had remained calm throughout the encounter. The officer's badge number had been visible. The location of the stop could be identified from the street signs and nearby buildings. Years of investigative work had trained him to notice these details automatically. By the time he reached the outer neighborhoods of Baltimore, the story had already begun appearing on several major news websites. Headlines described a tense roadside encounter captured by bystanders, and the same short video continued gathering millions of views across social media platforms. Yet back on the quiet street where it had all started, the flashing patrol lights were gone, and the morning traffic had returned to its normal pace. Angela had eventually been allowed to continue driving after the long exchange, taking her son to school, and then continuing toward work with the same steady composure she had shown throughout the entire situation. But the moment recorded by the bystanders had not stayed behind on that street. It had already taken on a life of its own online. When Daniel arrived in the city, he did not head home first. Instead, he parked near a small federal office used for coordination with local agencies and stepped inside, with the quiet focus of someone who understood that careful information always comes before action. A few minutes later, he was seated in a conference room, reviewing the same video again on a larger screen along with additional clips uploaded by different witnesses who had been present that morning. Each recording showed slightly different angles of the same scene. The silver sedan, the flashing patrol lights, the small group of people who had gathered nearby with phones raised in the air. One clip clearly displayed the patrol car number as the officer moved around the vehicle. Another showed the nearby street sign identifying the exact block where the encounter had taken place. Daniel studied each frame carefully, not with anger, but with professional patience. Evidence was never built on emotion. It was built on details that could be verified step by step. Outside the conference room window, the city moved through its ordinary afternoon rhythm. But across the country, millions of viewers were already watching those same moments unfold online. Conversations about the video were spreading through newsrooms, community groups, and law enforcement circles alike. Daniel closed the final recording and leaned back slightly in the chair. The situation was no longer just a viral moment on the internet. It had become a matter that people across the nation expected to understand. And the man now reviewing every second of that footage was not simply a concerned viewer. He was a United States Marshal who knew exactly how to follow the path from a single recorded moment to the truth behind it. By late afternoon, the video recorded on that quiet Baltimore street had traveled farther than anyone present that morning could have imagined. News networks replayed the footage repeatedly, while commentators discussed the questions surrounding the encounter. Community leaders called for transparency. Law enforcement officials across the region began quietly reviewing the details that had already become public. What had started as a brief roadside moment was now a national conversation about accountability and responsibility. Inside the small federal coordination office, Daniel Brooks finished reviewing the final report summarizing the location, the patrol unit identification, and the timeline confirmed by several independent recordings. Every piece of information aligned with the images that millions of people had already seen online. Daniel closed the file and looked around the conference room for a moment, allowing the silence to settle. He understood that the most important step in moments like this was not anger or dramatic confrontation. It was clarity. Facts carried far more power than emotion when the entire country was watching. A short time later, a formal request for review was transmitted through the proper federal and local channels. The process was professional, precise, and completely transparent. Within hours, officials from the Baltimore department confirmed that the situation would be examined thoroughly, including the actions of everyone involved in the stop. The same video that had spread across the internet was now part of an official record that could not be ignored. As evening approached, Daniel finally stepped outside the building and looked toward the skyline of the city where the entire story had begun earlier that morning. His phone buzzed again with another notification showing that the video had reached millions of views. Comment sections across the internet continued filling with people demanding answers, yet Daniel felt no need to rush the outcome. The truth already existed inside the recordings captured from several angles by ordinary people who had simply raised their phones at the right moment. Not long afterward, Angela called to tell him that their son had made it through the school day and that everything was calm at home. Her voice sounded steady, the same calm strength she had shown during the encounter itself. Daniel listened quietly and told her that the situation was already moving through the proper channels. When the call ended, he placed the phone back in his pocket and took one last look across the city streets. Sometimes justice does not arrive with dramatic speeches or raised voices. Sometimes it begins with something much simpler. A camera held steady, a moment recorded clearly, and the knowledge that when the truth is seen by millions of people, it becomes impossible for anyone to pretend it never happened. On that Baltimore street, the morning had ended hours ago, but the story that began there was only just beginning to reach its final chapter.